Hey there, thanks for joining me. I wanted to share with you a presentation that I gave in our Living Simply Nourished workshop series. I'm sharing this because I think it's really helpful to see how powerful our brains are and how we can use that to make changes in our lives. I just learned about all of this myself a few months ago after watching a documentary, and I'll link to that at the end. It is really fascinating stuff, and I'm by no means an expert on this topic. I'm just bringing you the information because I think it's so helpful to see how our brains work and super fascinating. The science is neuroplasticity, and it's probably something you've heard before because it's really popular in the news right now with all the new developing science. The idea behind this is that our brain is plastic. So when you first think of plastic, you might be thinking of something made of plastic, like a grocery bag or something, and not that the brain is made of plastic, but that it has characteristics of plastic, like being easily changed or molded and its ability to adapt to change. And here's the definition. The brain's amazing capacity to change and adapt. It refers to the physiological changes in the brain that happen as the result of our interactions with our environment. From the time the brain begins to develop in utero until the day we die, the connections among the cells in our brains reorganize in response to our changing needs. This dynamic process allows us to learn from and adapt to different experiences. So if we think about the cliche, you can't teach an old dog new tricks, this was the old way of thinking in the scientific community, thinking that the brain didn't or couldn't change after a certain age. They thought that after the age of 18 or so that the brain didn't change or it was really difficult to make changes. But now we know that this is completely false. It's been discovered through new brain imaging technologies that we can rewire our brains. I get so excited when I start talking about it because I think it's so fascinating. What's actually happening when we rewire our brains is that the strength of the connections of neurons that are engaged together moment by moment in time are changing. So to try to visualize this, let's use some imagery. Imagine your brain as filled with train tracks. Those are our thought processes. Routinely used tracks are very smooth and easy to ride, and old tracks become rusty and it's harder to ride on those. So those thoughts, processes, and ideas that we use every day, they have an easy ride through our brain. They're on those smooth tracks that get rode on all the time. So this can be a good thing, or it can work to our detriment, and we'll talk about that in a minute. A really interesting fact is that change is mostly limited to those situations in which the brain is in the mood for it. If you are alert, on the ball, engaged, motivated, ready for action, the brain releases the neurochemicals necessary to enable brain change. When we're disengaged, inattentive, distracted, or doing something without thinking that requires no real effort, your neuroplastic switches are off. So when we want to make a change, it's easier to adapt to the change, which for most of us, experience has shown us that, if we want to do something, it's a little easier to learn it or make that change. But it's so interesting to hear that this can be seen in brain imaging technology. And on that same note, the harder you try, the more you're motivated, the more alert you are, and the better or worse the potential outcome, the bigger the brain change. If you're intensely focused on a task and really trying to master something for an important reason, the change experienced will be greater. Again, let's use some more imagery. Look at this little bike rider. So imagine he is your thoughts moving through your brain. So new thoughts and skills carve out new pathways. If you are on your bike and you want to ride through a field, let's say, with really high grass, it's going to be difficult the first time. But the more you ride along that path, the more you will beat down the grass and the easier it will be. It is the same as making changes in your life. Be it your diet, mood, learning a new sport, or whatever. You can create these new pathways to form new habits, and it will get easier and easier the more you travel those paths. And now the old pathways that aren't getting used become weak. Just like the paths in the field, if we stop taking a path that we used to take and choose a new path, the old path grows up with weeds and it will be harder to find and use. So with repeated and direct attention towards a desired change, we all have the ability to rewire our brains. And that leads us to this thought: what we think, we become. We create those pathways. Those are our choices. Everything is a choice. You have to choose to create better pathways to weaken the unwanted ones. Among other things, neuroplasticity means that emotions such as happiness and compassion can be cultivated in much the same way that a person can learn through repetition to play golf, basketball, or master a musical instrument, and that such practice changes the activity and physical aspects of specific brain areas. So just like in the way in which we learn to play a sport or instrument, we can learn happiness and compassion and diet changes. It takes being committed to those pathways of change. So how does this relate to our diets? We need to facilitate lasting change. We need to stay on those pathways of change to make it easier to make this a lifestyle. So as we choose foods that are in alignment with a healthy lifestyle, we are creating new pathways in our brains to make better decisions and weakening those pathways that lead to poor decision making. As we retrain our brains, eating healthy gets easier and easier. And that's why we'll start to crave healthier foods, because our brain remembers that they make us feel good. So how do we retrain our brains? Well, the current buzzword is mindfulness, and I'm sure you're hearing that everywhere, and it's probably being overused right now, but the concept is spot on. We need to be conscious of the decisions we are making. Let's look at the first one. Continue making good food choices to create pathways that you want for the rest of your life. Continuing making good choices. And this is where moderation can fail you. You may say something like, I'll only have a little cheese or cake or candy, whatever your little thing is that you think you can hang on to. But every time you make those choices, you get back on that path, that train track of the poor decision. And now it gets harder to find your way back to the good decisions. Another way to use mindfulness is when you want to make a poor food choice, immediately force your mind to something more positive. So this is positive thinking, positive reinforcement. We're changing the bad thoughts into good thoughts. So choose an activity that you enjoy. Go for a walk, a hike, a bike ride. Spend some time with a loved one. Remember a special moment. Connect that thought to now something better. Make a healthy food choice. Do not allow that negative thought to create a smooth, easy ride through your brain. Envision the life that you want and play that on a never-ending reel. Remember, what we think, we become. And lastly, the most powerful thing you can do to aid in creating new pathways and creating lasting change is through meditation. And this part gets me super excited. And that's why I like to provide you with some graphics. This image shows a brain scan before and after meditation. Take a look at the brain on the left here. All the colors indicate a hyperactive brain. And this isn't like an abnormal thing. This is what's daily going on in our lives, the craziness that goes through our brains. And the brain on the right here is one after 10 minutes of meditation. You can see the colors have cooled and calmed down. The blues represent gray matter, and meditation increases gray matter. Gray matter is involved in muscle control, sensory perception, such as seeing and hearing, memory, emotion, speech, but more importantly, decision-making and self-control. So more gray matter means better decision-making, more self-control, increases in memory that make you choose those good decisions. So what does all this lead to? It leads to a higher capacity for mindfulness. Let's look at this one. This brain scan is more in depth. So if you look at the one on the right, or on the left here, you can see there's all this dimpling and a lot more shadowing. The hippocampus is not visible in this one. And then if we look at the one on the right here, the dimpling has almost been eliminated. It's way brighter. The shadowing has decreased, and now the hippocampus is popped out. So no dimpling, and there's lots more gray matter. Now the hippocampus is showing, and the hippocampus is the center of emotion and the nervous system. So what does that mean when that's popped out like that? It means less stress. So what does meditation look like? And this can be different for everybody. You can do a guided meditation. There's lots of great YouTube channels that will take you through guided meditations anywhere from 5 minutes to even longer, 30 minutes, an hour. And so that could be just sitting there in a quiet space and listening to that and absorbing that. The next one I have is walking meditation, which I find that a lot of people enjoy this, and this is one of my favorite things. So taking a walk or a hike and focus on the beauty around you. Focus on everything but the craziness going on in our minds. Be in that moment. Recognize the beauty around you. And the job of all of this meditation is to calm our minds, to know that you have control over the thoughts in your mind. The next one I have is mantra meditation. So this is finding a phrase or sounds that please you, and you repeat them while staying focused and being in the moment. So it might be a phrase like, I am healthy, I am strong, or just a sound. And you can use Google and Google some sounds that resonate on a vibrational frequency in the body. And it's actually pretty neat if you get into that at all and do some research. Next, I have breath meditation. So that's sitting in an upright, comfortable position, focusing on your breath, focusing on the inhale and exhale of your breath and filling your lungs with life giving air. You want to be present and find freedom from that dialogue in your brain. So, this is diverting your attention to your breath. So that way, those thoughts in your mind can just float freely through without you putting too much attention on them. And there are so many other types of meditation. Find one that works for you. Make it your own. It can be whatever you want. And the quote at the bottom is one that I found and I really liked. It's in the intention, not the action. So it's not the type of meditation you're doing. It's that you're taking the time to be focused on relaxation and being in the moment and mindfulness. So we can retrain our brains with mindfulness and repetition of positive behaviors. Be in the moment and create new pathways with good decisions that will last a lifetime. So lay those tracks to a healthier life. And lastly, I wanted to mention that documentary that I watched. It's called The Brain That Changes Itself. This is the book, which can be found on Amazon. The documentary is also on Amazon. You can also find it on YouTube if you're not a member of Amazon. I want to thank you for listening, and I hope you learned something new today. And if you like it, please share it on Facebook.